Can't police it though.
Right, fellas, we are Facebook Live, I believe. Just confirming that. Yeah, we're good. We're away. Guys, welcome. Obviously, week is it week 4 or week 5, Ben? Of cricket.
4, I think, mate.
It's 4 or 5. One of the two. Probably reflects where we're at with the lockdown at the moment. We have got a packed morning for you guys, for those listening in today. Once again, hope everyone's staying safe and well. Obviously, still tough times, but we've got a bit to reflect on the last week and the progress that has been made on that front, on a cricketing front. We've got a special guest with us for the first part of our webinar today. So we'll introduce him in a moment. I then want to look at some of the news that's been in cricket this week. Some of the crowds that potentially we might have. The West Indies tour, it's an interesting one. And also just discuss captaincy really, and the roles of captaincy within club cricket and also international cricket. It's been sort of in the news this week with Tim Payne and Jason Holder with the Tuffers and Vaughan show, sort of discussing it there, and it's quite interesting to get some viewpoints on that. So before we go any further, obviously welcome to Ben, who looks like he's in the south of France there somewhere this week, but obviously those who've tuned in before, that's obviously one up from his jail cell. Ben, escaped all right, did you?
Yeah, mate, just come to the outside today.
Yeah, I knew
a bit loud though, a bit windy.
I knew that spoon would come in handy. You've been digging with, mate. Fred, good morning to you. We've got Fred Hammond with us this morning. Fred, I'm going to let you introduce yourself and what it is recently you've been up to, but just so I can inform guys who've been watching the last few weeks. Fred has started his own podcast called Drinks at 15, which I think is quite a catchy, cool name. Those who haven't already had a listen, do have a listen. It's really easy listening. I did it whilst I've listened a few times while I've been painting. Not that that's the level of quality on there, but it has sort of helped us as a local cricketer get through lockdown. It's been quite amusing and interesting. So, Fred, welcome to you this morning.
Thanks, Tom. Thanks, Ben. Thanks for having me. So absolute pleasure to come on and talk about the podcast. It grew out of just a conversation really with myself and Jack Wood, who unfortunately can't be here today. But we're just two very average club cricketers, and we identify the game as two sides. And there's the side which you boys are more kind of in tune with, which is your head position and whether you're falling over at the crease and where your feet are pointing at the point of delivery. And the other side of it is more jam sandwiches, mini rolls, and a few team dynamics and the nights out after the fourth loss on the trot. It's that kind of thing that I'd say we're more expert at. So we thought, what better to do than start a little podcast? It's very easy listening. It's like you say, we try to keep things less than half an hour because it's unless we've got a guest on. We had Matt Boyce on, we thought he was just an ex-Leicestershire player, but it turns out he was actually ex-England player as well, which we felt quite guilty of because we didn't know. His Wikipedia page.
He's that top guy.
He's a legend, and obviously we've all played with him at Barkby, and we thought we'll get him on for a few stories, and he was fantastic. Although it was quite funny because we thought, right, we'll do our homework, do a bit of research, a bit of proper journalism. So we went on his Wikipedia page, and it just talks about his fielding. Nothing to do with his batting, nothing to do with his first-class hundreds or anything like that. So we gave him a bit of grief for a few minutes, and it's all good, mate. Yeah, and we tend to record on Saturday afternoons. We've got another professional cricketer lined up for this Saturday, so it's all going well.
Sounds.
Are you allowed to reveal what guests you've got lined up, or is that strictly a secret?
I will reveal it. It's Northants bowler Nathan Buck.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah, have you worked with him before, Tom?
Yeah, I think we passed him on to you because he's actually fishing today.
Right. Okay.
So we were meant to be tuning in with him at some point today, just for a brief chat after yourself. But he's informed me that he's currently at the lake. But it's just I don't know. I'm not convinced because the fact he messaged me at 20 to 6 suggests otherwise. I'm not sure that. Knowing Nathan, he's probably more like getting in than going out at that point. But who knows? He may well have changed. Fred, coming back to the recordings, is it true that these podcasts are actually recording in the roof of a pavilion?
Yes, it is. It is. We've rigged up the roof to the kind of loft in our pavilion to be kind of a social distanced recording studio. We wanted to also do it in the main room, but the acoustic quality is pretty terrible in most cricket pavilions. So we get up there surrounded by insulation and wooden frames, and well, you guys can be the judge of it. It was my birthday yesterday, and I asked my mum for some new microphones because ours are pretty shoddy, which some of you might have listened to. So, but we think we're doing a half decent job, a village job of trying to get a decent podcast out there.
That's good, man. I mean, it just begged the question: at what age, when you ask for microphones, does the sort of midlife crisis begin to start? So I do think that probably Fred could be well placed to answer that. Fred, you didn't record yesterday, did you, by any chance? Please tell me you didn't.
No, didn't record yesterday.
Oh, it was a sauna yesterday. I mean, cricket roof, pavilion roof, you'd be passing out, wouldn't you?
It's funny you say that. Not the Saturday just gone, but the one before that when we had Boise on. My laptop, which I thought was a pretty smart laptop, actually overheated in the top of that pavilion, and I didn't have a thermometer on there, but we were sweating bullets.
Nice. Maybe not Nathan. Maybe a few of his Northants mates could get in there then if it's going to shed a few pounds, maybe in the pavilion. All good, Fred. So, Fred, if obviously I've listened to this, and like I said, it's a great listen, really easy listening. Big thing I've come across myself is it's so relatable. I think that if you've played any amount of club cricket, it's really relatable podcast, and only if you've been in a cricket dressing room and environment can you experience what you guys talk about. So I think that's great. How do people listen to it if they want to get in? Download it or listen. How do they go about it?
Very easily. We're on Apple Podcasts, so all you have to do is search for Drinks at 15 on your Apple Podcasts, and even if you don't have an iPhone, you can still get onto Apple Podcasts through your web browsers. So we're there, and it seems to be going really well. Jack actually wrote one of our campaigns that we're doing at the moment is to banish small village hall sized mugs from pavilions, because you go through these away days and you've had a tough afternoon out in the field. You think, can't wait for a cup of tea, and you come in and the size of the mugs are pathetic. So we've actually written a joint letter to Mike Ashley from Sports Direct to try and get 3,000 decent sized mugs similar to these ones here throughout cricket clubs across the nation, just to end the plague of that small little thing.
You do only need 2,999 though, don't you?
Yeah, we did have one donation from one of your mates, Jack Beale, the other day.
Excellent. Fred, it's Drinks at 15 for the guys? That's Drinks at, and then just the number 15 if they want to find you, yeah?
That's correct, and that's the same on social media as well. Nothing clever with the at, just 80, Drinks at 15 on Instagram, Twitter, and that's how you find us on Apple Podcasts as well.
Perfect. Fred, did you? Is it true that you did a club sandwich 11? So basically, you picked the 11 greatest club cricket sandwiches that have ever been created.
We did. I'll just go onto my phone now because
did it create some debate as well? Didn't it? I believe it got a little bit heated, didn't it?
It's amazing actually how passionate people can get. So I'll run through very quickly. My 11 was opening with egg and coronation chicken.
Nice.
Number 3 was a ham sandwich, plain ham sandwich, to be eaten alongside mustard if you choose. 4, cheese, big on statistics. There isn't a cricket tea in the land that doesn't have a cheese sandwich on it. Number 5 is my keeper, which is tuna. And we kind of likened the tuna sandwich to a bit of a Kevin Peterson kind of personality, because they're always causing rifts in the dressing room regarding its inclusion of sweet corn. Number 6, a bit of a rarity, smoked salmon, but it's a really classy sandwich. Number 7, the King Blt. Number 8, getting into the bowlers now, chicken salad, followed up by cucumber at 9. Corned beef, working class hero Darren Goff at number 10. And coming in right at the end, the prawn mayonnaise sandwich, which can be quite lethal if left out in the sun.
I have to say, Fred, sorry to jump in there, but the inclusion of smoked salmon, cucumber, and prawn mayonnaise would suggest that you've spent the majority of your cricket career in the home counties somewhere.
Certainly a private.
Would that be accurate?
Yeah. Well, yeah, we did get a bit of grief actually because we didn't include crisp sandwiches, and then that opened up a whole conversation of what flavour crisp goes best in a crisp sandwich. I'm not a fan of cheese and onion. I'm more of a sauce and vinegar kind of guy, but the consensus was that prawn cocktail actually was the best to go in a crisp sandwich.
Perfect, guys. Crisp sandwiches, pavilion sauna roofs, special guests, whatever else it is that you might be discussing. I really think that if you've not already tuned in, please do. Just a few comments before we move on. Rob Taylor's joined us today and said, how did you actually escape, Ben? Interesting one. No, he's not. He's on his hours exercise for the day, Rob. Sorry, mate. He's in the yard. Nick Beggy says, come to Rutland for the swan and the pheasant. Excellent. I'm not sure whether Nick means to eat a swan and a pheasant being from Rutland.
I think you might mean in a sandwich.
I think he might mean a pub. I'm not really sure. Could you have some clarification on that, please, Nick? But yeah, so look, guys, really worth a listen. Fred, thanks for joining us this morning.
Pleasure.
You're welcome to hang around if you want. I know you might have things to do, but we're obviously going to discuss more of the head positions.
I do have one more question for Fred, actually, before we move on.
Please do.
Just thought of it. So in the most recent podcast you did, Fred, you mentioned hitting a cricket ball into your girlfriend's face.
Well,
oh, is it wrist?
Yeah.
In front of her face. Is she okay? What's the update on her recovery?
Mate, it was quite a scary moment for us both, actually. We were in the back garden, during lockdown, quite bored, and she wanted to learn how to bowl. So I thought that's absolutely fine. Tried to channel my inner Tom Flowers and get her on the right line. And anyway, she tossed one up, and I had that. It's exactly the same. This is why it's so relatable. It's exactly the same to any batsman out there when some shoddy spinner comes on, and they've got mid on and mid off up, and you think you've got to do it. So there was a split second where I thought this is going, and then I remembered that I was in the back garden with my girlfriend and kind of just pulled out, didn't quite commit, and I just pinged it straight back at her. And the impressive thing, she actually shaped up to catch it, which was, I thought, pretty impressive. But still, it was a drop, and she got caught just here, kind of on the scaphoid, and it bruised up, swelled up quite badly. That's called for the frozen peas. And she was on the sofa for about an hour with these frozen peas on her hand. And but still, if you can't catch them off your own bowling, then no thanks.
So we went down as a drop chance, I'm hoping.
Yeah, that's right.
Good stuff. Guys, look, been a pleasure having Fred this morning joining us. As he said, drinks at 15, catch them on the Apple podcast, take a look at them on social media, Twitter, etc. The podcasts are well worth a listen, guys. We think they've been excellent. So, Fred, keep up the good work, and thanks for joining us. Have you got plans now? You nipping on?
No, not at all. It's another easy Friday. So maybe a bit of research for tomorrow, but no.
Nice.
No, yes.
Okay.
Guys, I'll leave the meeting. So thank you very much for having me.
Cheers, Fred. Thanks for that.
Fred.
Bye-bye.
Very well. Right, Ben. Back to our agenda for the morning. That was really interesting, actually. I think that, have you listened to these, Ben?
Yeah, I have done. Yeah, I think they've done 3 now.
Okay.
About half an hour each. Pretty good.
I've listened to 2 of them, if not 3, and it's been very interesting. I just think it's great, just really funny for club cricketers, actually, really, really relatable. Okay, moving on. News this week. So with the ECB's announcements, cricket clubs have been scrambling around trying to get their facilities either open or open with restrictions. Ben, do you want to just feedback on what we've noticed of the current situation?
Yeah, can do. So it's literally after we finished the chat last week, we got a message through with all the guidelines from the ECB about what you can do, what you can't do now. And obviously, you can now go and have a net with a member of your household or one person from outside your household, but providing that your clubs put all the necessary guidance in place. So I know the ECB released their 11-page document for clubs on how to set up the nets appropriately for use really at this time. and it means that if your club is one that's got has had the time to sort that out already, and then you can go and use the nets. That's my understanding.
Yeah, I think that certainly our take on this is that, and it has been throughout the whole thing, is that providing that clubs are compliant but also comfortable in opening facilities. I think the ECB they've added the detail they required, and I understand that. I get that. I think some have interpreted that as they're making this complicated, but at the same time, I think it is needed, and I think that it also gives clubs the chance that if they don't feel comfortable to open, then they don't. And it's as simple as that. I've sort of a few ideas going around. I've seen some different ideas of booking systems. I've seen one club that have actually gone to their members and asked which members would be interested in using the facilities. I know another club that's only allowing paying members to use facilities, so those have already paid subscriptions. There has been a couple of clubs who have just gone ahead and used the nets, which is their choice, and just I'm not aware of anything in place. So yeah, it's an interesting time. I think that if anyone does want to drop me a line or Ben a line and actually just discuss what they've been doing or ideas, please do, because obviously we're quite nicely positioned, working with a number of clubs to potentially advise or give our view, or just run it past us if you want an external viewpoint. So I'll throw that out there now. One thing I'm doing, on myself and back doing one-to-one sessions, and one thing I've got we've been doing is obviously the hand sanitizers, the wiping down of equipment, etc. So like your sidearms and your balls and your entrance gates, if there's any gated nets, etc. And obviously keeping your 2 meters, which I have to say, having been back doing one-to-ones this week, that isn't easy. If you're quite a hands-on coach, that 2 meters isn't easy, Ben. And I think that it's having to change your behaviours and remind yourself, because the natural thing to do with a real little youngster, if they're not in the right position, is to either demonstrate or show them, or potentially just change slightly their position. So it's proving problematic for coaches and clubs, but there is a way around this, and I think that's the important thing here is that we've been given a bit of a ray of light as such with getting back doing sessions. I just think it's important now that we all involved at cricket clubs buy into this and keep things being done properly. I had this discussion yesterday with someone whether or not people agree with the measures or how strict they are. They're the measures in place, so we've got to find a way to get around them and work with them. Not so get around them, but work with them. Yeah, Nick from Oakham's come in there about the system at Oakham. They're having 2 nets. I think the great thing about, I was saying to the chairman at Oakham the other day, the good thing they've got, because they've got 2 cages as such, they can easily split the nets off. One of the problems is that if you've got nets side by side, they're only letting you use 1 net, which potentially halves the amount of time people can be netting, which is frustrating. Nick puts out there working on processes for bowling machines. Yeah, that's an interesting one. Obviously, plastic surface, so it can be sprayed, wiped down easier. The balls can be washed. I think one thing on the ball collecting that I've been doing is that if guys are doing a bowling session, it's important they use their own balls if they've got them, and that might mean having to collect the balls more often, but so be it. And on the batting front, my idea is that as a coach, I'll be collecting all the balls and touching my balls, whether that's loading the sidearm up, throwing the side up, throwing the ball, however it might be, or feeding it. And then at the end of each round, I'll ask the player to step out of the net, collect the balls myself, keeping the 2 meters, and go again. It's the only time ever I will let a batter get away with not picking balls at them. It's a pet hate of mine, along with parents carrying kitbags. Anyway, that is a complete another story. What else this week? Ben, what's your view on the Northants have come out there and said that they've been looking at potential crowds they can get into their ground, Wantage Road, county ground, and they're saying that they think they can get 1,500 into their ground. Does that give us an indication of where is this pie in the sky? Is it hopeful? I mean, what's your take on that?
I think I don't know how they've calculated it, whether they've, done a measurement on how many seats there are and how much space there needs to be between each person or each family or each group, if you like. But I don't really know quite how it would work if they were still saying to people you need to be a couple of meters apart, because obviously the queues to get in and stuff like that, like you will have seen them at supermarkets, it's just ludicrous, really, to stand in a queue for that long. And I think it'd be even longer if you're going to a sporting event with 1,500 people. So I think what they're hoping for is the measures to be relaxed enough that that's the size that's allowed for an outdoor gathering.
Yeah,
I think that's what they're aiming at. I don't think they've said this is possible now. I think they're saying this might be possible in a few weeks' time when things change and things improve.
I guess they've got to be ahead of the game, haven't they? They've got to be looking at all possibilities. Should, like ourselves, really, we've looked at measures we get in place that when we get the nod, we get back up and running. And I think that, understandably, if you're one step ahead of that, then you're being proactive, not reactive, aren't you, to any situation that may occur. It's interesting, though. But, so that's the Northants.
Chris Walsh has said, when was the last time Northants had 9,000 people in Wantage Road? I'm not sure.
Yeah,
I think he's getting at the fact that 1,500 people might be a big crowd.
Yeah. Chris is a Foxes fan, isn't he? As we all are. But I think it's interesting that's happened there. I see at Leicestershire as well, looking at news this week, that there's a new chief executive due to come in. So we wish him the best of luck with that when we eventually get back to cricket related. My advice for him would be at Leicester to try and relate to the people and the fans that we've got there. Obviously, with Paul Nixon at the helm, people are already more optimistic and more supportive and more understanding of results not quite going the way people want. I really, really hope we don't do the U-turn as Mr. Khan did for us and end up signing 4 washed-up washed-up pros. It's not the way to go. Soak the wage bill. Youngsters don't get a go as such. So I think I'm hoping that we don't go down that route again of signing some of that dead wood from counties who are releasing guys at 35, 36. But hopefully things will be looking brighter for the Foxes when we can get back on the field, and certainly we want to see Leicestershire and Leicestershire cricket thriving still. Okay, also, Ben, this week, the West Indies tour. Now, West Indies are meant to be coming over here this summer. Obviously, that has been delayed. Tests were due to start next month, I believe, originally. Obviously, that's been pushed back now. I've been listening to bits and bobs on the West Indies for the last couple of days, last week or so, and they are awaiting their medical scientific guys to actually come and do a recce, if you like, of the potential for them to tour. So at the moment, there's no cricket as such definitely in the diary, despite them aiming towards it. I mean, Ben, I don't know what's your take on the West Indies coming over?
I think they're probably just being sensible, wanting to make sure it's safe to do so, especially with what you see on the news every day. I don't think they're thinking, going to England's a fantastic idea at this time. They've probably got it better where they are, almost certainly. And yes, cricket's important, and obviously we've got certain commitments to fulfil from a financial perspective, and I'm sure they're the same. But I do think at the same time they've got to, and I think they are putting the players' health and that of the families and officials first. But again, I don't necessarily think it'll be cricket behind closed doors, if you want to call it that, because if there becomes a situation where groups of X are allowed to spend time together, then if X is enough to get 2 teams and backroom staff in, then that's enough for a game.
I think that, yeah, it's an interesting one because the proximity of touring and you think of going on tours and flights and what have you and everything. There's so much for these ops guys to think about, isn't there? It's not like 11 players rocking up to their local club trying to, social distance, which would be possible, I think, at done a certain way. But imagine trying to do that in a touring party and flights and everything that comes with it. It must be a logistical.
Yeah, you do kind of feel that if they're having to change things drastically from what they would normally be doing, especially in the game, if they have to change anything in the game, I don't think they'll play. I do think they will want, if they are going to play Test cricket or international cricket, that they will want it to be cricket as well, proper cricket really, rather than having to consider things like not shining the ball and stuff like that. It's just not a reality.
So they've said this week you can shine the ball. I'm loving this, right? You can shine the ball with sweat now, but not with spit. There's a quote.
I don't understand who that's directed at. Is that directed at?
So that's what they're saying. The professional game,
international cricket, or?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's what the advice they're getting back is. You can shine it with sweat, but not with spit. So it's interesting. I mean, I think Root came out with a quote this week saying that it needs to be played whilst keeping the integrity of the game, or something like that. 100%. Which I think sums it up perfectly. Is what you're saying is that all these restrictions on the game, if there's too many.
I don't think you should have any restrictions on the game really at any level. It's different, what we're doing at the moment, staying 2 meters apart to allow people to train, I think is one thing. But if you're saying, things like if you're playing club cricket, the keeper can't stand up, you can't have slips standing too close to each other, you can't use the changing rooms, you can't have tea. Well, it's not the same game, is it? And if the risk is that high, if the risk is so high that you can't shine the ball properly or you can't use a changing room, then we shouldn't be out in a group that large anyway.
Great point.
So the risk is either high or it's not. You need to make your mind up, basically.
Well, the powers need to make their mind up, because there's lots of discussion. We have done, and we've touched on it the last few weeks. We could sit here for the next 20 days and discuss this, but the reality is, like you say, is that when the guidelines come out, that's what you follow, and whether you like it or not, that's what guidelines are there for.
We've got two little comments down here, Tom.
Yeah,
I think are going to add to this nicely. Chris Walsh, Fleckney Cricket Club, has said Tony Grant has 6 tickets to the Edgbaston Test.
I think he's obviously offering them out, so thanks for that.
Well, I believe, Tony, that because the test has been postponed and not cancelled, you won't be getting a refund.
Not yet. No. So I've got 3 tickets. Well, I had 3 tickets to Lords, and they wrote to me as one would at Lords, on a nice, freshly produced piece of paper and a feather and quill, ink and all that. And but they basically said that 3 tickets will be carried over, and when they know more, they will. Nick Beggy.
If you want the tickets, then it's not really a massive problem. That.
Yeah. Nick Beggy.
Nick Beggy said, should the ECB focus be more on getting grassroots cricket up and running? We're storing up a mental health time bomb, and sport is a release for many. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that there's 2 points there, isn't there? Nick, good point. I think that a secondary impact, if you like, of not playing cricket could be a mental health time bomb. I think it would be wrong, though, to suggest that cricket and solely cricket is responsible for one's mental health.
I think that's exercise as a whole.
Yeah, I think that.
Yeah, in terms of mental health, you've got to look at exercise as a whole rather than just one sport. And currently, that you do have the ability to. The majority of people have the ability to practice cricket if they want to. There are ways of doing it. But I do agree with that in the sense that if people are constantly, locked indoors, it's definitely not healthy.
There has to be a point where, I do get that, is that, your release, when it says about a release here, maybe Nick doesn't mean just the physical release, maybe he means the social side of it, the sitting with your mates, discussing things, having that interaction. I think that's what, like you say, there's the exercise side to it, but I think that for mental well-being, not just the physical impacts on your mental health, but also how then the social impacts that have been taken away. So really interesting.
But should the ECB focus more on getting grassroots cricket going, or what do you see them doing at the moment?
Yeah, we've discussed this in the last few weeks, Ben. From my side, it's pretty straightforward, really, with the grassroots cricket, which is yes, there's a need to do it, but as you said, I fear it's not at the top of the priorities for the ECB. I think that it's the participation boxes ticked, but revenue-wise, what revenue is it going to be bringing in? And it's not. It's unfortunately, with the Sky deal as it is and the broadcasting rights, it has to, for the longevity of the game, it has to be top down, because there is no money if they don't get the international games on. It's tough. I'm glad I'm not having to make these decisions.
Well, no, it's just, yeah. But I think to be honest, if you look at it as a whole, they have been showing attention to both ends of the game, top and bottom. They haven't neglected the recreational game at all by any stretch of the imagination. And I think with the international game, they do just have more means available to try and get games played if they must play them. If they said you must play this game in 6 weeks' time, regardless of what's going on, it's more likely to be able to get an international game on than a recreational game.
Yeah, I think the ECB have been good throughout this. I think that yes, there's been people frustrated with the time it's taken to get things out there, but at the end of the day, I'm sure we'd all rather agree. We'd rather have something definite in place than something that's rushed and put together and not, because as we always allude to, cricket is a very unique sport, and with that comes unique circumstance, situations and things that need to be in place. So hopefully that sort of answers that. Lynette Hart, Jacob's mum. My son's an elite footballer and loves his cricket, football, etc. Also joins us for one-on-ones. He struggled finding, but he's finding a new normal. He's enjoying his Zoom coaching that he's done and the fitness he's focused on during his break. But she's saying that they're happy. We will wait. Grassroots football is also wanting a safe and fast return. I think that's the view of many, is that, like Lynette says there, is that, people will wait. We've had to wait long enough and they will wait. I think it's an acceptance now. We're an impatient nation, aren't we? And I think that one thing we always say, Ben, don't we, about youngsters that we coach, is that there's so little patience, whether it's having to listen, having to wait their turn. And I think that if anything positive could come out of this is a focus on, like we say there, enjoying his fitness and keeping active and getting outside, and also as a nation of youngsters developing some form of patience. I think that's a real positive going forward, don't you?
Yeah, definitely. We got a comment from Martin Henderson as well. He doesn't see any cricket being played this season.
That's interesting. Did you see the Twitter poll results? I think we've lost you there, Ben.
Overall,
yes.
Leads me to believe that there will be cricket, and people are saying between July and August. I don't know if that's hopeful or whether that's based on facts.
Yeah,
those votes, but I think it's hard to stay positive at times like this. And Hendo said he's not been able to net anywhere at the moment, so he's just been focusing on the fitness side of things, which I think is a good thing to do. If you've got the time to do it, it's definitely a good thing to do.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I was just saying, we've got our we ran a poll. I think we've got about 80 votes, 79 votes. We ran a 24-hour poll on our Twitter page, and 41% of the people that follow us believe there'll be no cricket at all. 32% felt there'd be an August start. 23% a July start, 5% September start. So
there's 55% of the vote says July or August start.
Yeah, 60% of the people who voted out of that felt we would get some cricket. Is the take we got. and 40% felt
It's nice that people are being positive.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it totally depends on what happens, doesn't it? It's all subjective. It's all opinion, really, isn't it?
Lots can change, I think it's fair to say. What else from this week? Ben, I just wanted to, before we move on to captaincy and a bit of a discussion on that, is it worth mentioning anything else that we've seen this week in development wise with regarding on a cricket? There was the I just want to put a little I think Stephen Fry did a voiceover on the ECB video, and I thought it was quite a little touching, moving video really about how the cricket community has come together and what it's done to maintain positivity. And I think that was a really nice video. Do check it out if you've not seen it. It's worth seeing. Ben, captaincy. Just want to touch on that as sort of the main topic really now to discuss. So how's this come about for today's topic? So as I said, I was listening to the Toughers and Vaughan podcast this week, and they had Tim Payne, Australia Test captain, and they had Jason Holder, West Indies Test captain, and they were just discussing about the beauty of the conversation is that you had Michael Vaughan also discussing and asking questions, one of England's finest captains, and giving his take on it, and also interviewing Holder and Tim Payne. And I think the first one thing that came across to me from listening to that is that despite being Aussie, Tim Payne comes across as a great bloke, doesn't he? I had the pleasure of playing against him actually when I was in Australia, and his brother-in-law was at my club, so he was around a little bit. But one thing that he does come across is just a great bloke, and you can see why he gets guys under his wing and he has an influence on that team. I think most would agree he's not an Australian great player. He's not going to go down as one of the great players, but God, he's a decent captain, isn't he, Ben? Oh, we lost you. I may have lost Ben there. I think with Tim, that one thing it's clear that he said, and he came across with a real key message when he was being interviewed. He was saying, as a relatively young captain, in his early days, before I think he captained a couple of sides in his younger days, and it was almost felt like he didn't have the guidance or the experience and didn't really appreciate necessarily what was involved. I think the advantage he's had is that he's come back into the Australian side as an older captain. He's obviously more experienced, etc. But then Michael Vaughan made a point that he was a relatively young captain.
Try that again.
Yeah, no, you're back on. He was a relatively young captain in England. And he said that there's so much advice that goes towards captaincy. Something like Joe Root. There's so many, you need to be doing this and the planning meetings and doing that. And there's this commitment. There's the media commitments. There's so much that's involved with captaining that the advice given was that the best thing they can be doing is just leave the guys to get on with their captaincy when on the field. And I think that's one thing that shined through from certainly listening to Tim Payne and Michael Vaughan speak, was that as a coach or as a backroom staff, yes, you can have your plans, yes, you can have everything in place, but actually it's about then allowing that captain to express themselves, make decisions out on the field, and actually ultimately make mistakes and make errors, because they become better for that and allowing that learning process to take place. So I think anyone that's listening in today, young captains or coaches for etc., don't be afraid to let these guys, make errors. It's tempting, isn't it, as a coach to captain from the sidelines, or if it's your son, or if it's a younger captain, you're a senior player. But actually, get the prep right, have the discussions at the right time, not necessarily in the heat of the moment when players are able to reflect and review, and allow your captain just to go and do it and express themselves, because that's what ultimately we get characters from, don't we? If everyone did it a certain way, everyone would be the same. I think another point Tim Payne made before I sort of come on to you, Ben, is that his biggest challenge, often captains will be extroverts because naturally their leadership, their voice is something that, gives them that, commands almost that authority. That's not to say that's the only type of captain there is. But I think that Tim Payne stated that the hardest thing for him was not knowing when to talk. Sorry, not knowing when to talk, but knowing when not to talk. And he said that there are times as a captain where it's best to say nothing than it is, for example, to state the obvious. And I think that his insight into certainly team discussions and post-match debriefs is that if there's nothing to say, or if it's just repeating himself, then don't say it. And I think Michael Vaughan backed that up as well by sort of saying, if he had nothing to add, then rather than reinforcing the same things that a coach has said and going on and dragging a meeting on, his view is that, well, actually, this would be more powerful coming from Truscothic, or this might be more powerful coming from somebody else. And I think that was quite an interesting message for all captains out there. I do think there's no doubt that, Ben, have we lost you or got you?
No, I'm still here. I'm just having to move inside.
No problem. There's no doubt that I think as a captain at the elite level, it's very, very different to captaining at club level. And I think that Ben, can you just share some of the challenges you think captaining at club level that the guys face?
Yeah, I think club cricket's a slightly different beast, especially when it comes to captaincy. Just in terms of the sense that you've got you're more likely to have little groups of players within your squad, I think. And it can be difficult sometimes to make sure that you keep all those sort of micro groups on board with what you're trying to achieve. And I do think that's quite an important aspect, that you're more likely to get a challenge with at club level than at higher ends of the game.
Okay. And so give us some examples. What sort of challenges that would a club captain face, like on a weekly basis?
Well, I guess this might be a bit better.
That's fine. The viewers are happy that you're back in your natural habitat there of east wing Selfrey.
Yeah, I think like I said, you're more likely to get sort of different groups of players. So I guess I'd call them little friendship groups within your team, whether that's a first team, second team, and you probably get different attitudes towards playing the game. Especially in club cricket, you've got guys who you'll have people in the second team who want to progress to play first team cricket or better cricket, or want to do well. But you'll also have people who just want to turn up and have fun. And sometimes the attitudes sort of cross in the middle and don't really line up. Whereas I think in the professional game, you're more likely to have everyone pulling in the same direction generally because they want to further their career.
I mean, certainly there's an old saying, isn't there, in club cricket, that the lower down the teams that you captain, the tougher the job gets. And I think that a lot of guys can relate to that. If you're a third 11 captain, for example, and the first team need a player, well, then the second team take from you, the first team take from the second team, and then what does the third team do? Scrambling around for players. And I think that it's a thankless task, isn't it, captaining at times in club cricket. And I think that going into that with your eyes open is probably the best way to approach that. But I think that also, I mean, unless people have done the role, it's a job that, and I mean, I look at someone like my brother, for example, who's captained a top club side for a while, and he would say that as a captain, it's a 3-day job really, because you start thinking Thursday night, crumbs, have I got 11? What's the batting order? Who's going to bowl today? Who's first change? What if he doesn't get a bowl? Is he going to throw the toys out? Oh God, he's got to have at least 4 overs, otherwise he'll be ringing me on Saturday night moaning. What about if he pulls out again because he's not, the county academy coach is not allowed to bowl more than 3 overs in the week? Or what about if he's got and I think that there's so much that surrounds it that maybe people don't realise, that as a club captain, the greatest part of the weekend probably is 1 o'clock crossing the line, or 12:30, and actually doing what the captain's main job is, which is changing your bowlers and tossing.
I mean, one of the things that we touched on yesterday with the webinar with Paul Shaw, as I know you asked a question about buy-in, Tom, and I do think when you're talking about buy-in as a coach and then as a captain, and at different levels of the game, you are basically asking for different things from people. I think in the professional game or in the performance game, whether that's junior or senior cricket, you are generally just asking people to push in the same direction as a squad. And particularly as a coach, it's, I think, about getting people on board with the ideas that you're bringing. Whereas as a captain in club cricket, I do think there is a small importance in actually being liked by your team, because ultimately it is predominantly about enjoyment for them. Even though they want to be competitive and might be playing in a good league, but it's still recreational cricket, and people want to enjoy their weekend. And a large part of that for some people is liking the blokes they're going out on the field with. And again, it does help you get buy-in. It's like when I spoke about having these small groups within the dressing room of sort of different friendship groups and stuff like that. And it is important to have your influential characters on board. Yeah. And the best way to do that is have a good relationship with them.
I agree with that. Just moving on, and we're at the time. Probably got from the 5 minutes or so. Our friends at Self Sports, I think starting grassroots will be very difficult. Coaches have to follow similar setups to pros in the way of small groups. Yeah, I think that's similar setups regarding the guidelines. I think pros or amateurs, I think it's the same. The virus, I guess, is the same, isn't it? Whoever you might be, professionals or not. And not all clubs will be able to afford potentially coaching for this summer if we do go ahead, because I'm guessing because there's no membership fees come in, or limited membership fees, which is a very interesting point. And finally, they make a great point as well about will clubs have had their coaches or helpers safeguarded, DBS'd and trained up? And it's true, isn't it? Because the natural time to start thinking about that would have been March when everything kicked in the lockdown. So that's really insightful. That Nathan Dodd has joined us from Brisbane in Australia. Nathan, nice to see you joining in. Probably about 2 a.m. there, mate. So I'd probably suggest getting to bed soon. Rex at Newtown Linford. Rex, good to hear from you, mate. Hope all is well. Great to hear that Newtown are getting nets started back up. That's just great to hear and great to see. I know very professionally run clubs, so no doubt they'll have everything in place to do that. But that's just a bit of a hello to all the guys at Newtown. Rex, thanks for that. Hope you're well. Ben's gone back to his room. His cell. Thanks. My
cell, yeah. I'm very conscious that because of the light, it's very dark on this side.
Right. It's the preferred filter, Ben, for you, I'm sure.
I actually can't see my face. It's great, isn't it?
Yeah, it's ideal, mate, for everyone tuning in. So yeah, I guess on the captaincy side of things, that's interesting because the one would think captaining your country may well be a massive job compared to captaining your local club, but actually there are different challenges in different ways, aren't there? And I think that the insight, whilst never having captained a country such, having captained local clubs and having listened to these guys who have captained their country, it's interesting because they have similar challenges and identifying their key players to key players of influence if they're trying to get messages over, if they're trying to influence a dressing room, if they're trying to create a new environment or a different culture. It really is about, from my experience having captain sides, it's about targeting your key guys to drive that forward and saying to them, look, I need you here to play a key part in this. And if it's the same bloke, I've also seen dressing rooms where it literally just is the captain that's pulling people through and, get out there, you should be helping, why aren't you doing this? And I think that's when it becomes really difficult. I think the best changing rooms you'll see are those that the captain does command the authority and is allowed to get on with their job, but there's also 2 or 3 senior players who aren't afraid to also give guys a kick up the backside.
Yeah, but I think again that comes with having the captain having good relationships with those players. If there's not a good relationship there, then they're less inclined to do that sort of thing. And yeah, like I said, I do think that is an important part, having those influential people on board. And I suspect that's a problem, regardless of, well, not a problem, but I suspect that's an important aspect of coaching and captaincy, regardless of what level you're working at, really, is having the influential members in your team on board with what you're trying to do. Yeah.
And I think the best way to create that influence is, it's the old saying, is it almost lead by example? If you're skipping the slide, you do need to be first there. You do need to be the first to be seen to be proactive in greeting the opposition, greeting the umpires, making sure things are in place, making sure the equipment's set up. And there is that communication side of it and I think this comes back to why the extroverted character fits the captaincy role better, is that ultimately there are certain guys I know that have just not got that authority or just to shout to someone out the change room to help with, I don't know, putting the rope out or something. So it's a tough gig, but I think also can be very rewarding. Seen some great club captains, and it might be quite good to get the current club captain on next week if anyone's interested in doing so. Ben, that about brings to an end today of our cricket coffee morning. I've managed to get through 2 coffees myself, one Colombian instant mix, and also my tried and tested, trusty, intense Italian blend strength 2. So always good, that one. Guys, thanks for tuning in. Really, really good today. We are, as people know, we are back up and running one-to-ones on a extremely limited basis, at limited time slots, etc. This is in order to comply with ECB regs, government regs, and more importantly, comply with our number of affiliated clubs whose facilities we will be using alongside them. So thanks for your patience with that. Those who have already requested one-to-ones and emailed in, great. Hopefully we've managed to sort something out. If you've not got your slot yet, please be patient, or a venue near to you. Things are changing by the day, by the hour. So as we said, the positive is we're back up and running on a very limited basis. But obviously it just requires everyone to follow the guidelines that are set out by ECB, government, and ourselves, and to keep going, really. Join us next week, 10 a.m. again, for more cricket coffee chats. It would be great if anyone can send in any topics they want to cover. That's pretty much how we run this, is that guys will message us or suggest to us the sorts of things they'd like covering, and we can go from there. Thanks everyone for joining in. Hopefully it's been useful. Ben, thanks for your time this morning.
Pleasure.
Yeah, we'll let you get back to your gardening. And yeah, guys, we will catch you soon. Thanks a lot.